minutes of doing the show. And he was freaking out. And then I will tell you, when I left LA, my luck changed, because doing weird conceptual stuff outside of the city just didn't fly. Like going to a farm and trying to tell them that you're going to, like, it was really hard.
So you have this resourcefulness, right? And you hit the ground in New York, and the art thing just doesn't play out for you, right. And you're like, I don't want to scoop ice cream either. I'm gonna start cooking, right? Yep. So, you know, we talked about this, like back in the day, like, you know, like I grew up on Long Island, and you know, you didn't go over the Atlantic Beach Bridge to go surf in Rockaway unless you were looking for trouble, or you were looking for drugs, or you wanted your car stolen. I mean, but there was a surfing scene there. There was. You just didn't you didn't search for it. But how did you kind of like bring together this element of surfing, tap into that culture, and then bring your cooking acumen into that as well? It was like, you know, you're at the infancy of like the surf culture in Rockaway. You're at the infancy of Williamsburg exploding beyond an art community. And you kind of like grew with it. You kind of pioneered it in a strange way. Both cultures, really.
I mean, it all happened by accident. Like, so, like there were two soap stars from As the World Turns that had that restaurant space, and they were having like, they were lovers, and they were having like a bad time. And I came into the mix, and it was like this triangle. And I was just like, dude, I think this space is so cool. Like, what are you guys doing here? And eventually they were like, you know what? Like, you seem to want to do this more than we do. Why don't you take the space over? So then I was like, and this was like tiny. It was like 200 square feet. And I said to him like, all right, I'll do it. And suddenly I was on the lease. And then I had this vision of wanting to do a surf shop, but I didn't know like how it was going to work without something besides surfing, since I really didn't know any surfers in New York. Right. But so that's where the Chowder came in. And there was already a stove. They were making candles for the gift shop on the stove. So it was a little 4-burner electric stove. And I was like, okay, wait a second. I've got a shop and I've got a stove. And so we were carrying GNS surfboards at the time, and a line of weird Brazilian, like sort of canvas jackets, and chowder, literally just to get people to walk in the door. And because I figured at least we could talk surfing, and then they could have a chowder, and maybe they'd have a beer. And
then they'd buy something. I remember.
Maybe they'd buy a surfboard. And most people didn't get drunk enough to buy a surfboard. But then Luke, Luke, who has since moved to Hawaii, and Manny, I think you probably met Manny. They all moved to Hawaii. But anyways, these guys took me surfing in the Rockaways for the first time, and we brought boards out on the train. And I just remember coming over the boardwalk and saw like a pretty decent wave. And I was like, this is insane. I was like, I can live in this city for the rest of my life. I just took the subway to surfing. Suddenly I was like, dude, I'm home. This is nuts. Because I was sort of thinking like, I'll do New York for a year or two, but like, it's not going to have everything I need. But then to see this beach, and not only that, but to see this beach that was, I loved everything about it. Like, I just loved how rugged and
it was busted. It was busted, man.
I loved it, man. You know, I was so happy.
I'll tell you, Hurricane Sandy was tragic for the Rockaways, but it was also to its benefit. I mean, what's happened after the hurricane is just unbelievable how it just turned around. But back then, man, it was rugged for sure.
It was rugged.
So you started like just generating like this underground culture. I remember it was like surfers hung out there, people who just enjoyed seafood, you know, and it brought people in from all over the place, and people would talk about
chowder heads.
Yeah, no, they talk about chowder, and they talk about fishing, and they talk about, you know, like the stories that you and I could tell about, like, oh, my dad and my grandfather, and when I was 6 years old, and yada yada. But
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, it suddenly it all worked, because now I was like, because I was doing this thing, like you said, that was kind of more of an art project, like a throwback to my grandfather and my fishing days and the chowder and whatever, and the boards on, you know, that was literally my garage, my grandfather's garage. It had my surfboards, his fishing gear. And then all of a sudden, when the Rockaway thing happened, I was like, hold on. This just got real. Like, now you can get your chowder either before or after surfing. You can jump on the train at 5 a.m. and you can go out and surf. And it just, in the sense of like it being the perfect formula, it was. Like, I'm not a business guy. I was like really in over my head, and I've never made like a dime in my life, honestly. But like, that shop was so legit because it was just real.
It was real. It wasn't for, you know, you think about Williamsburg right now, and there are a lot of things that are highly stylized and pretend to be something that they're really not. Mm-hmm. When you walked into that place, you knew you were part of history. You were part of a culture, and it was crafted in that way that was very authentic. You know.
Yeah, a lot of people land in New York with a certain idea of what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And it's not a bad thing, but oftentimes it shifts. And I think it's really cool how, you know, you were able to do that and find a space, and even just having the burner there being like, well, screw it, I'm going to make chowder then.
Totally.
Having your fishing background and have the proximity to the rivers and stuff, were you sourcing your own fish?
Well, so the fish thing happened. No, I used to, which I loved. I used to go to the Fulton Fish Market, the real one, which was unbelievable. Like that, I never thought at the time, like, this is going to disappear one day. And like, I so regret that I just didn't take more photographs, and I didn't just, it was from another world. Like literally the guys over the oil cans, they'd like, you know, burn stuff just to keep them warm, and they'd be like warming their hands. And these guys were such characters, and they're all yelling and screaming at each other. And then in the middle of all the fish sales, and you'd have like the Japanese guys who would be coming to buy their bluefin tuna for like whatever, some amazingly expensive rate. And so they would be there too. And then the clubs would let out. And you get these girls coming through in mini skirts, and it was like wolves, like erupting. Like the whole place was insane. But anyways, so I would get my fish there, and then it was so hard to make chowder on that scale and be able to actually make some money, because chowder, as you know, doesn't have a shelf life. So like, if you didn't finish it up that day, you were in trouble. So I went to, it was called City Soup at the time. And I went to them, and I was like, I have a problem. Like, I'm making soup. It's spoiling, And they were like, wait, did you say you could make a good chowder? And like, the next thing I knew is I was like their chowder guy. And this is not a joke. I was in a lab coat with a respirator, because when they make soup, they make it in 500-gallon vats. So the spices that you're dumping in, you're putting in like a handful, not a pinch, and they're dangerous at that quantity.
Yeah, sure.
So if you get that up your nose, you can die from cinnamon. And like, it's like crazy. So all of a sudden it was like fast forward, and I was working for them developing chowders, and I had a whole deal with them where it was like, we'll never use your chowders in our shops, but you need to help us make different chowders. So it was like just one insane mistake after the next that turned into a lifestyle, I guess.
So I want to kind of like move this forward because there's so much to talk about. I mean, so you had the smaller place, and Hurricane Hopeful grew into a bigger restaurant, and then it grew into another restaurant. And that I remember was when Williamsburg was just on fire. It was exploding. It was in the tell and you were, I remember, like, I think wasn't there like an ESA event at your at the Hurricane Hopeful? Didn't we do a couple of, like, film festivals there?
So I made a mistake, which is I mixed business and pleasure. Did it with a girl I was dating, and as all those situations go, it like ended badly. The restaurant ended up taking like a little more of a tropical turn than I had always imagined a New England thing, and I already felt like, it's getting away from me, like that. It's not supposed to be that. But she's great, and like it just was like it had to end. And I guess that was around the time when I went and pitched. This is actually insane. So I went and I pitched a seafood show to a production company that worked for the Food Network. And I was like, I have this idea. It's based in chowder and fishing and and we're going to follow like the food from the plate from the boat to the plate. And they were like, we're not interested. We've never heard of you. Like, get the fuck out, basically. So I went all New York meetings, you're just like, that didn't work. So you're walking, with your like tail between your legs. And all of a sudden, literally, this lady opens the door and she's like, wait, Ben, can you come back here for a second? She's like, did you say you can make a chowder? And she's like, we need to know all about your chowder making. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? They kicked me out. They were so rude. And now I'm sitting in an office and I have like 5 executives around me all being like, tell us about your chowder making. And I should have known, but I was stupid. I literally thought they were interested in me and my lifestyle and my chowder making, but they weren't. So fast forward to, you were there, Chris, right? I think you were there. So they go, oh, we're going to film your lifestyle on the beach.
Yes.
Like doing your surfing, doing your fishing, and they filmed for 4 days. And then at the end of it, they're like, we want you to throw a party for your friends, and you need to come ready to make your best chowder. So the restaurant was up the block. We did it on the East River in this like abandoned little area, but we made it look all tiki. It was pretty cheesy, but fun. And I'm there, and I shouldn't even say this, but somebody, I don't remember who, came up to me like, dude, this is going to be so awesome. I love this shit. And they're like, you want to take some ecstasy? And the guy handed me, and I don't do drugs. I didn't do drugs. I'm not a druggie, but on that day, I don't know why, I decided to pop an ecstasy pill.
Another bad business decision.
Dude, now I am a wreck. At which point, a good wreck. I was having the time of my life. At which point, Bobby Flay shows up in a black SUV, walks up to me, and I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm like, I don't even know if this is real right now. And he comes up and he's like, he goes, do you know why I'm here? And I go, no. And he's like, I said, I think you're here to taste my chowder. And he goes, no, we're going to do battle right now. And I was like, dude, just went into a sweat, complete, like, I was just sweating. I couldn't even like pick stuff up because my hands were just like so slippery. And I remember did you
touch him awkwardly? Did you like touch his hands or anything weird? Were you like,
why is this guy hugging me? Yeah. And like, why is he like all clammy?
Oh my God.
And in such a good mood too. And all of a sudden it was like 4 cameras come out of nowhere. And then they're like, go, make your best chowder right now. And I just said to my buddy, Freddie, who like barely spoke English, I was like, Freddie, I don't know what's happening right now. I was like, but we have to make a good chowder.
That's awesome.
And Lawrence, do you remember Lawrence from the Reed on Bedford Avenue? He was there too. And he's like, I called him. I'm like, Lawrence, you have to get over here right now with everything you've got out of his shop, out of the kitchen. And he's like, Ben,